Welcome to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Badass Direct Sales Mastery is a podcast for rock star direct sales moms who are determined to make their business kick ass. Jennie will share her knowledge of effective sales and recruiting techniques, tips to get what you want from your business, and will interview direct sales professionals and leaders from various companies. The interviews will give insight to how these rock stars got to where they are and where they plan to grow in the future. And now, the direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger.
Welcome back to another episode of Badass Direct Sales Mastery. I'm your host, your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger, helping you whip your business into shape. And today I have with me Steven Stott. Now, he's a nomadic soul who has moved over 30 times. Good golly, I thought I'd moved a lot in my life as an Air Force brat. I think you have me beat. He's a queer person of color raised by a single mom and someone who learned to breathe again after losing his sister Stacy in a car accident that they were both in. Growing up, he didn't feel like he belonged anywhere. He didn't have a guidebook, no example of what was possible for someone like him. So he wrote his own playbook and discovered somatic breathwork, which has helped him transform his grief and isolation into connection and purpose. Today, he empowers others to take the shit that life throws at them and turn it into fuel for their dreams. And if he can go from lost and stuck to thriving, so can anyone who's ready to take the first breath. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I love that I found you because I feel like it's one of those things like you don't know who you're going to meet unless you put the work into like doing something different, which just started my business a little bit over a year ago. And so I've never would have guessed finding myself going to do these things for myself versus doing it for other people, tabling at events and promoting other nonprofits and things like that. So it's great that I bumped into, as you know, Michael Whitehouse, who then I bumped into you at his event, and how we can make these beautiful connections from people like, I grew up in the East Coast, I live on the West Coast, but you live in the middle.
Right in the middle.
So it's like
Exactly. Well, and it's again, it's for my badass crew. This is just another exclamation point, underline, highlight, in the fact that I tell people network, 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 because you never know who you're going to meet. And you and I met at a networking event that Michael Whitehouse was hosting. And Michael has been on the show a couple of times already. So they all know, if they've been listening to those episodes specifically, how important networking is. So, and that's how you and I met. And I am just as glad to be here because I had been hearing, or to have met you, because I had been hearing about breath work for literally years and had never taken the plunge to actually get into a session with somebody until you and I met. And I was like, you know what? This is the universe saying something. I need to do this. And it was fantastic. But before we dig into my experience with it, how did you get started with breath work?
Yeah, so a big part of my background is in social work, and where I'm at now is kind of in a bit of a transitional phase because if I do therapy, I'm kind of stuck to working with people who are only in Washington.
Yeah.
And so a part of my thought process was, well, how can I impact more people with something that's equally as powerful,
Yeah.
but not just people in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think also the benefit of starting and running your own business is being able to travel and get to go, eventually I want to go to different countries and being able to share my work with other people outside of the United States. And so I kind of stumbled upon somatic breath work, just from Facebook ads. And it was like, oh, cool. Like I knew about yoga. I knew about, breath work in a nutshell from what I've heard and seen. And so I was like, let me check it out because they talked about being trauma informed, and where I was certified, it was done through a partnership with Arizona State University. So they're offering CEU. So I'm like, it's legit, and they're speaking my
Yes.
language, and they're doing what they need to do to make sure that when people get certified, that it's a program that is backed by a university. And so they did a 3-day training, 1 hour a day, just going over the techniques and being trauma informed and being aware of when you work with people to work within the scope of your practice because people are in different backgrounds. So some were social workers and therapists, some were yoga instructors, some were life coaches. So it really was a big range of people who want to get certified to provide an additional support service. And so I love how powerful that it is in its benefits and how you can really help someone's mental health and physical health and just overall health and wellness with helping them to tap into the power of their breath. And as the intro kind of talked about the death of my sister,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have expected to have had such a like profound impact with my grief being 22 years out, being a social worker, being someone who went to workshops and grief support groups, who now runs grief support groups and does the workshops and is the social worker.
Yeah.
To have had that impact where it was like, oh wow, I did breath work. And in my sixth session, it was like I was able to release the grief that like, I didn't even know was there.
Wow. And that is so powerful because everybody listening has experienced loss, right? It may not yet have been someone as close as a sibling, and certainly not in the case where, like what was in your introduction of being in the accident where your sister was lost. That's huge,
Yeah.
right? But everybody has experienced loss in some way. To have a different way to approach the grief is really important. And, you and I did a session actually just a few days ago. And for me, actually, it was like, what, like a week ago? I don't know. Not that it really
Yeah.
matters. A week ago today. But it was a really great introduction to the process for me. And it was an incredibly powerful one for me, too, because I wasn't quite sure what to expect with breath work. And especially since it was done long distance. I mean, you were on the East Coast and I'm here in the middle of the country when we did this. And I feel like it was exactly what I needed at the time that I needed it. It was pretty cool.
Mhm.
So you've been doing the breath work now for, you said, about a year. What are some of the reasons that people have sought you out? And what are some of the outcomes they've had from doing breath work sessions with you?
I think similar to you, it's kind of been that, universal alignment where like people were looking for things. And I guess speaking a little bit to the badass crew is that people aren't going to find you if you're not putting stuff out there.
Mm,
So I started like right away, I was like, embrace the darkness LLC. I'm like, that's it. Like,
yes.
without thinking about much, I was like, it's different. It's kind of rebellious. It's the opposite of like going into the light and being happy. I'm
Yeah.
not saying either or is good or bad, but
Right.
if we're ignoring like the darkness, even though it's there, then it's like we're allowing it to grow and to fester into something that could be worse versus like it's just a part of who we are. And
Yeah.
can we befriend our darkness?
Ooh.
Because if you don't love yourself, right, then
Yeah.
there's a part of you that grows into resentment. Like, and then it's, I hate myself because I don't love myself.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, dude. So before every session, I do something to work to connect with my audience energetically. And there's a bunch of people who just had like aha moments around that idea right there, which is loving yourself means loving every part of yourself, including the dark, the sad, the whatever somebody may call that, right? And that's huge. I will say that my own experience when I was going through it, when I forget what your exact words were, and feel free to fill it in or don't if you want to keep it a secret for people who maybe want to experience this as a totally new thing. But at one part of the breathwork session, my overwhelming feeling of what was coming over me was full acceptance of myself.
mhm.
And even just now with what you said, I'm like, oh, full. Full acceptance of myself. Uh, mm. Ooh, some more people just had some ah.
Hmm.
Because I think that's a really important piece for people to understand, though, is the that full acceptance is everything. Is everything.
Hmm.
So how do you walk people through? Well, okay, let's go to basics. Before we go a lot deeper, let's go back to the basics for the people who are like, wait a minute, I don't even know what breath work is. Like, so can you define for people at the most basic level what is breath work or somatic breath work?
Yeah, I think if we go down to its basics, what everyone knows, even if they don't know it, is like breath is life.
Mm-hmm.
Like without breathing, we wouldn't, we can hold our breaths. If you have any kids, if there are any parents here who are like, I'm going to hold my breath until you give me what I want. And you're like, okay, well, you can hold your breath for as long as you want, but eventually you'll take a breath because you'll have to. Even though kids are, even though kids are really good at getting purple in the face and probably freaking their parents out, like, oh no, you're not breathing. Like they will have to breathe eventually.
Yeah, they'll pass out. Like that would my
Right?
kids never tried that crap with me because I was a science teacher. Like I was like, you'll pass out, you'll breathe, it'll be fine. I'll make sure you won't hurt yourself when you fall. It's okay.
Right?
They're like, oh crap, mom's more stubborn than I am.
Yeah. And I think the bigger part too is that there's more science that's coming out. So I know a lot of people are looking for like evidence, science-based
Right.
truth. And it's like if breath is really like what gives us life, then how can we utilize it? And I think it's coming into the view of it being pushed more into the
Yeah.
benefits that it has and how we can really tap into our nervous system. So a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, fight or flight system. I know that. I learned that in school.
Right.
And so how I was trained is that somatic breathwork is a way to tap into both our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, as well as the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. So the
Mm.
first half is to activate the stress so that it helps to move the energy or whatever is stuck. And then the other half is to whether you call it reintegration or repatterning, is to kind of pull in the thing of the love, the joy, the gratitude. So it balances it out without over, because there are some breathwork styles that are really intense.
Yeah.
And then there are other breathwork styles which are really calming.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I try to find the balance of saying more of a gentle practice, because if people Google it or they go online and they look up somatic breath work, you're going to get a lot of clickbait of where people can get to emotionally if they've had a practice. And a lot of, I want to say that I've seen, they're probably also practitioners. So when you see people having
Yeah.
intense emotions and they're hitting the ground or they're yelling or they're bawling their eyes out, it's probably because they are in a training, getting certified. So they're in the space where they're with the people
Yeah.
doing the training and using that footage to kind of get people. And I think that can be scary because I've had people do that too. Like I've looked up videos and I didn't know, I thought maybe that was what was going to happen in your session, and go, no, like I help you build the foundation for you to get there so that when you're ready to go there, then we can get there together.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Because, yeah, I didn't quite know what to expect. I had heard from people who had been through sessions. Now, I did not go look it up because I just didn't. I had heard from other people who had done this, like that they had had some pretty extreme experiences in just like their first session. And I was like, okay. And I think that might have actually kind of kept me from doing it. But
Yeah.
knowing that there's something that's a gentler, more supportive process through it, because yeah, maybe there are some people who are really attracted to the idea of, you know what? Yes, I want to dive right in and get into like I want to get this shit out now. And then there's people like me who are like, mm-hmm, nope, we're gonna build up to it. That would be great. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of people who assume that I would be the person who'd be like, yeah, no, let's get it done in one session. Let's go. Like, no, I don't want to push other people to do that. I'm certainly not going to push myself to do that. Like, there's a reason I put my emotions down in a place. So I'm going to take my time getting to that little box and opening it up and releasing things.
Yeah.
You know, let's make this a whole experience, not a, rip off the band-aid. No, thank you. Not if I don't have to.
And sometimes it can be too much. Like if you, even if it's in a well-intentioned space, if you push someone too far,
Yeah.
there could be like consequences of like either, I mean, now that I'm probably scaring people out,
No, 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 no.
like there are forms. So like one of the breathworks that is out there is like holotropic, and that can be too intense for people because it almost gets to a place where you're probably hyperventilating in full stress mode. And so if people have heart conditions, obviously
Yeah.
if you're pregnant, most breath work is not uh, something that you should try, unless
Right.
if it's slow, deep breaths. There's nothing wrong with taking slow, deep breaths for anyone.
Yeah.
But when you get more into the stress, like activation kind of breath work, that's where it can freak people out. And that's why I'm like, with all of the sessions that I've done, I've
Right.
always told people do slow, deep breaths, keep them connected, and go at your pace. And when I
Yeah.
say increase your breath or increase the speed, it's still slow, deep breaths. So it's funny because I'm like, you don't have to go fast, but you can, but like not too fast.
Right. Go at
And
your own pace, right? Follow what
Mhm,
your body. And I really did feel that when I was going through the session with you, that it really did feel like, okay, this is how fast I feel like I can go during the part that was on the faster side. And
mhm,
so, got me to a place because, I'm also lucky enough that I don't feel like I've got PTSD. Certainly, I haven't had experiences that most other people would associate with a PTSD experience, right? So I can see
mhm.
how something like we're breathing like that would be very difficult for some people. But I can also see the benefit of working through it with a supportive person, right?
Yeah.
So, it was very good. And I am, for one, am very much looking forward to what this process will bring forth as we continue. Because
Mhm.
I think it's an important thing to, for me, work on myself, not just for me, but work on myself for my partner, for my kids,
Mhm.
for my clients. Because if I'm not the best version of me, how can I go and tell them to be the best version of them?
Yeah.
You know? And frankly, I like the idea of breath work more than going to therapy because,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's a part of where my shift is. Like, I'm a social worker and I can do therapy, but even like in that process again of like walking away of being licensed and doing therapy because I know how
right,
powerful it can be just to guide people through a breathwork practice and to be able to have my experience and knowledge with social work and everything that I've learned to still bring
right,
that to the table to provide that support. And I've even, and I know we kind of like shifted a little bit, but I've had a social worker who is currently in her doctorate degree for social work. And she was skeptical. She was like, she didn't think it was going to work, but she had a friend who was like, OMG, you have to come try it. And so she's like, I'm going to try it because I trusted my friend. And she came for a
yeah.
session and she was like, holy shit.
Right?
Yeah. And it's like, so it's like, it's amazing that, and some people I only work with like once a month. And there's a massage therapist who's a Reiki master as well. We do trades. So
Yeah,
like she'll give me a massage and I'll do a breathwork session for her. We've been working for, I want to say 6 or 7 months. So one session a month in 7 months, she's like, I can't believe where I am because, she's been through like homelessness, single mom, not the best relationships, was adopted. So all of these things and how, again, 6 sessions, an hour a month, how she's like, I'm in a completely different space than I was. And she has done her work and she does do Reiki. Like, so she is a part of like her own healing and how breath work is another tool that she can add with me as a guide to kind of work through and push through some of the things that, again, get stuck in our bodies that we don't know is there, but it's there, but we don't know. And
yeah,
so how do you get rid of that?
yeah. No. Oh, that is so good. No, and I definitely see that because just in the first session that I did, the things that came up for me were, like I said, the full acceptance of myself, which is something that I have been working on for years, decades, like been working on it. And it was like, even in that moment, like, okay, there's some weepy weepies going here. Like, because it wasn't just the idea that this was something I needed, it was the feeling that it was there. Right. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what that feels like. Uh, right. So it was
Mhm.
just this, because one of the things I've personally been realizing about myself is like I'm really good at reading other people. Really good. Like I can, I have done this before. Literally walked into a bar, read a complete stranger from across the room, had someone who was there at the bar with me go talk to that complete stranger across the room and be like, hey, I know this is a weird question, but my friend said this about you. Is that true? And he was like, yes.
Like,
How
oh.
did you know? And it was one of those things. It was, he used to be a nerd in high school and he got
Mm.
really hot, but he doesn't know he's hot yet. So she went and told him that. And he was like, okay, first of all, thank you. But how does she know? And I don't know. She just looked at you and said that's what it was. Like I can just read people's body language. I can see it.
Mhm.
And, but when it comes to reading myself, I don't have the same tools because
Yeah.
I can't see my body language because I am in my body. I can't see my facial expression because by the time I'm looking in a mirror, that facial expression is gone.
Mhm.
My voice sounds different to me than it does to everybody else. So I can't listen to pitch, tone. So I have to rely on learning what things feel like in my body and
Mhm.
where they are and what that means. And so that is a realization I've had in the last, like, I don't know, 6 weeks that we're recording this. And we're recording this literally the first week of 2025. And I'm really excited because during the session with you, I knew what it felt like to have full acceptance and love of me.
Mhm.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Y'all, that is what I think probably some people are like, that's what it feels like when God or Holy Spirit or whatever your belief is. That's what it felt like, y'all. It was freaking amazing. And I want everyone to have that experience. Now, I don't know if that's the experience you're meant to have if you do decide to go do breath work, whether it's with Steven or somebody else. But oh my God, do I want everyone to have that feeling of acceptance and love of self? It was amazing. Amazing. Seriously, life changing, amazing. So, part of the reason why at the end of the session, I went, okay, Stephen, what does it look like to work with you? What can we do? How can we make this happen? Right. Because I think it is so incredibly powerful. So, we could continue talking about breath work, and I'm sure we will. We're going to have you back at some point, I'm sure, because I think this is too important to not have people experience, whether it's, like I said, whether it's with you or someone else, but I can
Yeah.
speak to what it's like to work with you. I will say that much. And you were kind enough to put together something for the badass crew. So maybe if they want to have what I call the Baskin Robbins pink spoon experience of Steven, what is it that you've put together for the audience, for the badass crew?
Yeah, so I have created a quick 5 minute somatic breathwork session so that people can hear my voice and hear what it's like. And, I'm a person of feedback. So I'm like, if you don't like it, then let me know because I obviously like to create more things that are going to be beneficial to people. And sometimes it's like you said, like you were like, what are the words that you said? And sometimes that doesn't matter because it's more of the experience, it's the felt sense of what I said. And so if you can let go of the things that because we are a top-down people,
Yeah.
mind and then body
Yeah.
versus body and then mind. It's what is the feeling, and then it helps to recreate our mind.
Oh, that's so good. Yes. And I think that's literally what was happening when we were working together was It was helping my body give my mind new thoughts to have and to be like, hey, this is what this feels like.
Mhm.
Doesn't that feel nice? Don't you want to do that again? Is what it came down to. So you have a 5-minute guided meditation so they can get an idea of what it looks like, feels like to have a mini breathwork session with you. That is awesome. And so my badass crew already knows that they can access the link through the show notes, the episode notes, or the description, depending on what app you're using to listen to, watch, or access this episode. But just in case this happens to be somebody's very first time listening to the show, what you're going to do is, if you're on YouTube, you're just going to scroll under the video where it says description, and you'll see we have key takeaways, a basic summary of what we discussed. And then, oh, look, there's the link to the guided meditation, and you can click on it and he will send you a copy so you can get access to that. For those of you who are listening on a podcast app, all you're going to do, grab your phone, as long as you're not driving, click on today's episode, scroll under Steven's picture, and oh, look, same thing. Key takeaways, a summary of the episode, and the link to get to the guided meditation. And they will also find your social media links. Now, where is your favorite place for people to connect with you if they want more? If they do the guided meditation, they're like, oh, that was so good. I want an hour of this. Where would you like them to connect with you?
They can find me on Instagram, and it's going to be my first name, Steven with a PH, _ embrace the darkness.
Love it. And of course, the link will be there in the show notes, guys, so you can just click on it and from your phone. And oh, look, there's his page, and you can follow him, send him a message and be like, hey, I just heard you on Badass Direct Sales Mastery. I want that experience. Let's set it up. So, Steven, this has been awesome. I am so glad. We need to send a thank you message to Michael Whitehouse for having his JV Connect event, because that was so worth it, because I not only got to reconnect with him, but I got to connect with you. Woo! So grateful. So thank you for being here and sharing your breathwork practice with everybody here too.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. It's been an honor to connect, and I look forward to connecting in the future and getting to know the Badass Crew more.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, Badass Crew, you know how this goes. Stay tuned, because there's another badass episode on its way.
Thanks for listening to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Why are you waiting to go to badassdirectsalesmastery.com? Don't make the dom get her whip. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with another rock star that you know in direct sales after you subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. You can also check out the show notes for links and any contact information mentioned in today's episode. We'll see you next time.